Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We're joined today by Sam Allen, co-host of the Hardwood Hustle, director and upper management member at PGC Basketball, and founder of Blue Collar Basketball. Calling in from Atlanta. Coach, thanks for being here today.
That was a fancy upper management. I just got a new title. I like it.
Well, considering I don't know what it exactly is, I do know you're part of the leadership team. So we just went with that. Coach, given your involvement in multiple spaces, I want to go way back to the beginning. How did you get into coaching? What was your journey before that led you to that first step into this space? And what was the process like for you landing into the world of coaching?
So to answer that question, I'll start with, I grew up playing sports, love playing a lot of sports on the street, on the playground, organized, unorganized. And, basketball was always kind of a first love, true love. And so I got serious with basketball as a player, probably around ninth grade. That's where I'd say I started to get a plan on my training and getting serious with it. And I tell a story where I was a 30-30 guy in my ninth grade year of being the guy that went in the game. We were up 30 or down 30. And then I had a coach, pull me in a post-season evaluation meeting and challenge me and basically say, if you want to be this, you better do this, this, and this. And, you don't always know you're in those life-defining moments when you're in them, but then you can reflect back later. So long story short, I started working and becoming a better player. And I, eventually earned a college scholarship and went and played 4 years of college ball. And my senior year, probably about midway through, my coach at the time, my head college coach, said, "Sam, I want you to come back and be my assistant next year." And I was a history major. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't have great direction. Some of these coaches, you may be one of them, like, "Hey, I knew I wanted to be a coach when I was 9 years old." I'm like, wow, good for you. That was not me. So I actually sat on it. And at one point he pulls me in like 2 months later and he's like, "Hey, I got to know an answer." And I was procrastinating because I didn't know. And so I ultimately said, all right, I'll do this because I love basketball. I love competing. I was like, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I did coaching. Well, so to get to there, I got into coaching. And then you realize really quickly how impactful you can be as a coach and impacting other people. And so for that reason, I started to fall in love with coaching. So I'll stop there. That's probably the initial way, if I hopefully answered your question.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. And to your point, no, I wasn't one of those guys. I figured it out probably sophomore year of college. I was managing the men's basketball team and I was enjoying it. And I was like, well, I was probably junior year. I think I want to coach. And it was like, well, in order to do that, you have to be able to teach. So I was a religious studies major and I had to figure out what I could teach at the public school. So quickest way to another degree was an English major. So I got that. And then that's what led me into it in that space. But what would you say, since you transitioned very quickly from being a player to a coach, were a handful of things that you became aware of very quickly that you needed to figure out, both from a coaching standpoint and from a transitional standpoint in roles, player, coach? What was that shift like? What did you realize? Because it just hit you in the face that you didn't necessarily think about in advance.
When I hear that, it's a great question, but when I hear it, the first probably two things that come up for me is, one, that the players I was coaching didn't love it like I did. Mm-hmm. Number two, that just because I could do something as a player doesn't mean I could teach it to another player. Sometimes what innately I did, whether that was through just stuff I learned as a player, I didn't like, I played point guard. And so I'd have like our point guards ask me questions about how to do this and that. And I could always show them. I don't think I always could articulate it well, which, reminds me something I'm very passionate about. But I see this in Atlanta a lot. I don't know. I'm sure it happens all over the country. But you'll see like professional players, whether the NBA, WNBA, or just overseas players who get out of playing and they transition to coaching. And then a lot of kids or families or parents will invest time, money, resources into them. And being a great player doesn't make you a great coach. Mm-hmm. Being a great player can help you as a coach, no doubt about it. But I see that mistake happen a lot. Like, and I like to say that and remind people, like, it doesn't matter what I did as a player. Yeah, I accomplished some things as a player, and I'm very grateful for that and proud of those things. I was a few years ago inducted to my college Hall of Fame as a player, and that meant a lot to me. But that doesn't make me a great coach. It just helps maybe give me some credentials and validate. But so again, I get away from your question. I don't even remember what the question was. Oh, what I learned when I first got into coaching. So that's what I recall right now, answering it, 20 years later.
No, I love the answer because it highlights two things that people run into when they first get into the profession that those of us that have been in it a long time know. One, you probably are way more passionate than the majority of the people on your team, especially if you're coaching at the youth and high school levels, probably the college level for that matter as well. And two, just because you can do it yourself doesn't mean you can instruct it. And I've actually watched in the classroom throughout my teaching career that my colleagues who are most decorated and educated, like from a degree standpoint, often struggle conveying that knowledge to the students because they understand it at such a high level, they cannot dumb it down for the age appropriate delivery that is needed. So I think those are great answers, and I appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious, from that first role as an assistant, what did the rest of that journey look like before you stepped off the proverbial court and founded blue collar basketball more as a director than a institutional coach? What other stops did you have? What did you learn at those? And then what led you into founding this organization?
Man, I just cringe when I think back at my early days of coaching. I know that's one of my first things. Like, what, they say what you don't know won't kill you. Well, actually it can kill you. You need to know some things, like what you eat, what you put in your body, we need to be knowledgeable. And I apologize to any players I coached back in the day that didn't know what I was doing. Right. And so it's important for coaches. We just did an interview earlier this morning on the Hardwood Hustle with a show to be released later with one of the best teachers in the game. But it's just so important to continue to grow as a coach so that you can grow the people around you. Manu Watsa, president, owner of PGC, says that often is, if you want to grow others, you better grow yourself. So, Justin, to circle back here to your question on what that journey looked like. So I got into coaching, coached for almost 10 years at the college level. And I have 3 kids, but my wife and I at the time, we had one, our oldest boy now who's 12. And then our 2 boys are 20 months apart. And when she was pregnant with our second son, I started to really feel a tug and a pull on my heart that, man, in college coaching, I'm spending a lot of time recruiting players that I never will coach. I'm spending all this time with players that I'll never get to really impact. And I was on the road 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. I got after it. That's how I prided on work, but I was gone a lot. And like I said, I want to coach because I want to teach. I want to be on the court. I want to impact kids. I want to, use basketball to teach life. And I was doing a lot of recruiting, and I liked aspects of it, but I recognized not sure this is the best fit. And I had always, when I was getting my master's degree, I'd written out a business plan of starting my own organization to because of my player development story, like I mentioned earlier, the 30-30 thing. And so I always loved player development side. And, you know, I took a bet on myself and took a chance and a step and a leap of faith. And we were living out of state and in Alabama at the time. We moved back to Atlanta and started blue collar basketball for those reasons. And I had no idea what I was doing in terms of running a business. I just knew I wanted to work with kids, and I had some very, very growing pains of like, I was coaching high level college players, and then boom, now I'm working with this 7th grade kid who can't make a layup on a park. And I'm like, what am I doing? You know, I did enjoy working with higher level players who were really committed. Mm-hmm. So then shortly after starting BCB, Justin, I did attend my first PGC session as a volunteer staff member. And in the very first classroom session, I was blown away by what was being taught. And keep in mind, I had been coaching for 10 years in college. I had been all over the country learning from some great coaches and going to clinics and I watched every coaching DVD known to man, every VHS, and thought I was a good coach or thought I was well-informed and knowledgeable. But I realized in that moment and in that week, ultimately at PGC, that, oh man, I got to get better. I got to communicate better. I got to teach better. Mm-hmm. And so with PGC, it put me on a path to becoming a better teacher, a better communicator, and just ultimately a better coach. And, you know, I went from being like this volunteer staff and then, you know, now one of the directors. I don't really direct much anymore, but and ultimately in the role of PGC coaching. And so that's been my journey up to this point. And yeah, I just love growing, love seeking out growth.
Yeah, I want to touch on 2 things there. One, for those of you that are listening, if you have not attended a session at PGC basketball, you are doing yourself a tremendous disservice, even if you are not a basketball coach. My first session, which used to be called prep school, I think it's like Playmaker College now, whatever, but I learned more about teaching in my classroom experience from that than I did basketball coaching. So there is utility there for anyone. I highly recommend you go. I go every summer for a week just to refresh, and my children go, and it's been great. So I'll give you that plug, Sam, because I'm with you on that. That I had sent kids before, but I had never attended. And then once I finally did, it totally pivoted my approach, and super valuable information. Number 2, I would like to ask, what transferable skills have you figured out by going from highest level to kid who can't make a layup on an outdoor court and figuring out how to instruct, teach, coach that development stage that helped you actually be better with the elite development stage? What did you see in yourself that you learned with the younger group that you started translating when you worked with the more elite athletes that you train? And I ask that because I'm the varsity basketball coach at the school as well as the athletic director, and I also coach middle school girls. And it gives me a completely different lens, but it has been so important in my evolution in how I coach all of our athletes that I make sure I keep a foot in both worlds like every year.
Yeah, another great question. You got some good questions. So first off, celebrate you on your question asking. But, you know, the thing I think about that is this. Like, I have to put on a different hat every time I step on the floor, meaning right now I'm coaching our 17U team of guys, a lot of guys that are very high level high school players, most of which will go and play college basketball anywhere from Division I to Division III. And so how I coach them is significant. Well, is different than when I go step on a court when I'm working with our 4th grade team. The goals are different.
Right.
At the end of the day, where what I need to always keep in mind is, as a coach, I'm there to serve. I'm there to serve my players, and anything more or less is getting away from the main thing. So I'm there to serve them. I'm there to help them become a better player, better person, and be a positive influence on their life. And so that needs to be at the front of my mind. Does my competitive juices take over at times? Absolutely. Do I fall short of that? 100%. But that's got to be at the front of my mind. And I hopefully for a lot of coaches or all coaches, that's what you're there to do, is just to serve the kids you coach. But when I coach a fourth grader, my goal is my wife sent me this post or text a couple months ago that was so true. I don't know if she was trying to coach me up or not, but she said, your value as a coach coaching your 11U team is not measured whether you win the 11U championship. It's measured in, does everybody come back and sign up for 12U? You've probably seen it.
Yep, absolutely.
I keep that in mind. It is, and I take great pride in our BCB programs. One of the best compliments we can get is when parents will text me or call me, or I'll be in a conversation and say, when my son or daughter got in the car, they couldn't stop talking about practice and they were so giddy and they were, saying how much fun it was. Like, that's a huge win.
Mm-hmm.
And can you be fun and be serious? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be fun and have really high standards? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we want to put them on opposites and you got to pick a side. It's like, you can be a transformational coach and be really competitive and want to win championships. You can be like sometimes we say, oh, the transformational coach that wants to be at weddings and invited to baby showers. It's like, yeah. And that doesn't mean they're soft.
Mm-hmm.
Being a transformational coach is hard work, man. It's a lot harder than a transactional coach,
Mm-hmm.
because then you can clock in and clock out. And when you're transformational, you're all in. You're doing more than what's asked of you. And so I'm getting excited again. I think I might have got away from your question. What was your question, by the way?
Honestly, I don't remember, and it's not important. Your answer was great. What I want to take from that is validate what you said. You can be a transformational coach. You can have high standards. And again, this isn't a celebrate PGC pod, but I find myself often after 10 years of sessions doing it in a very similar way, where you're making comments that are very standard setting, but with some levity and some prodding in a way that gets you to the same place, but without, the old school that maybe you and I grew up with, and even before that, of just kind of the taskmaster approach where there was no space for mistakes, right? And I think that you highlight that to a T. It's very hard work. It's different. You have to do some other things. You have to invest in relationships, and then the basketball, the vehicle of basketball is really there to teach leadership, followership, to help people understand how to be part of something bigger than themselves. And I think that you nailed that.
And sorry to interject, I would say, Monty Williams made this popular a year ago in the playoffs, right? Where he said, I call them up, call them up. And I agree with that. And I'm building on your thought, but I want to add a little side note to it. Is when you're in practice as a coach and your team isn't bringing it, like the energy's not there, the mood's not right, the effort's not where you want it to be. You could blow the whistle and say, get on the line and we're going to run a suicide and we better get this right. Well, guess what? Your effort at practice is going to get better, because you know why? They don't want to run again. Mm-hmm. And so you got the result you wanted, but you also played probably the short game. I want players to want to work hard because they want to work hard, because that's the standard we have, and because that's what you do in life. And because part of being a great teammate is working really hard, that's giving great effort. And so I don't want to use a threat or a punishment. Now, don't get me wrong. We'll do some competitive stuff, and the loser will have some sideline sprints or push-ups to put something on it, or we might say, hey, you won that game, you get to do 10 push-ups. Losing team, you don't get to do push-ups. You get to get stronger. Winning team. But I think I think that's important as coaches is let me go back to what I'm saying here. You can call them up and you can call them out sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So last night at practice I was running, I thought we were really good for 90 minutes. And I thought it's 2-hour practice is a long practice, but like the last 30 minutes, I didn't think was good. And I told them at the end, I said, guys, I loved how we showed up, but the last 30 minutes, it just wasn't good enough. Like our standards weren't met. And I said, I could get passionate right now and chew you guys out and challenge you. But what needs to happen is you guys need to hold each other accountable. And there's times like, just to be really transparent, when I lead a PGC session in a camp setting with 160 athletes, I put on a little different hat when I'm running my team. I'll be a little bit tougher. I'll come at them a little stronger in a direct way. But I also hope in my maturity as a coach over the years that it goes back to what we said a minute ago, that I'm serving them and it's not about me. Because sometimes I let the ego get in the way. Oh, they're not working hard. Oh, that looks bad on me as a coach. And I got to call, like, I don't want to source it from that place. I want to source it from a place of not fear, but like love and serving them.
Right. Well, let's pivot into this then. You are going to take a new job that's in an institutional setting, be it high school, be it college, be it grade school, whatever it is. What are your non-negotiables? What are the things that you are going to teach and hold to standard? And how do you go about implementing that from the standpoint of you need your players to buy in, right? And you go with the cliche, a player-led team is always going to be a coach-led team, right? And so how do you soup the nuts, right? Bullet points, but just as you're giving advice to people that are listening, like, hey, we're starting from scratch, boom, 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 and then we're reinforcing, and here's how we're doing that.
Real easy for, we use this in the BCB is number one, give your best effort. I like to redefine that as compete. Like competing is another level of effort. Okay. But we can keep it simple. Number one, give your best effort. Number two, be a great teammate. And number three, be coachable. Now we can spider web out from those, and you can't just say them and leave them alone because players are all defining those. If you as the coach just said it to your team, you got 14 different ways they're receiving it, because that kid over there has a definition of effort. That kid over there has another definition of effort. This kid over here has they think being a great teammate is this. This other kid thinks being a great teammate is this. Mm-hmm. So then we define it and we do what I call teacher talk, not coach speak. Coach speak being really general, teacher talk being very specific. Mm-hmm. And so we put some language and some more tangible ways we can live it out. Yep. And so, when we say give great effort, I think that's a great foundational piece, because if me and you, Justin, are teammates and I'm going to be a great teammate to you, I got to give great effort, because when we do one-on-one and we're working on defense, offense, whatever, if I don't give my best effort, I'm not making you better, and vice versa. And so we say part of being a great teammate is giving your best effort. And then we define what is coachability and why that matters. Well, if you're going to be coachable, you have to have a level of humility. You have to leave the ego at the door. And by the way, coaches need to do the same. Do you stand up in front of your team ever and show vulnerability and admit when you fall short? Do you show humility? Are you coachable? Do you allow your players to hold you accountable when and if you're not falling short, then number one, you probably don't have any standards. Mm-hmm. Or your ego's so far in the way that you don't have any self-awareness to know that you fall short. And so those are the three things. Those would be foundational pillars from which if I was taking over a program or any coach listening, I think you could do really well by just following those three.
Absolutely. And I think anybody that's listening, your non-negotiables don't have to be those, but I would think you need to spell them out as quickly as Coach Allen did. And your athletes should also be able to spell them out that quickly and have an understanding. And if not, then that's a task that we all can work towards and try to live out. If I asked you what is the most recent thing, it's not a really good word, and I'm sorry for that, that you have implemented into your program that you saw somewhere else and you appropriated it, and it's had a tangible ripple effect on either your success or your culture or both? What would that be?
The first thing, there's got to be a better answer, because this is not like a culture or leadership thing, which I believe we'd want to double down on. And I always want, like, all of our BC, we have like about 26 BCB coaches right now. And the thing I always want to reiterate to them is double down on culture, double down on the intangibles. If the X's and O's aren't right, work on those and make them right, but double down on those things. Now, here's my answer. Mike Neighbors, who speaks at a lot of our PGC coaching clinics and has become a good friend and head coach at Arkansas Women, he has a green light shooting system that he used going back to his, University of Washington days. So I took that and I simplified it for what we do and how we can use it. And I think that's big. And I'm gonna say why that's big. And I think it actually does tie into culture. So bear with me. When you have a green light shooting, let's create a definition here. Green light shooting system is saying, hey, we have our 15 players and we have a series of shooting drills or drill we do in practice, and then we track all of those stats. And then we have a green light shooter, a yellow light shooter, and a red light shooter. You shoot this percentage from 3, you can shoot anytime you're open, let it fly. You're a green light. Yellow light means we got to work the ball around, maybe change sides of the floor, maybe get 2 or 3 paint touches, and then you can shoot it. Red light, you don't shoot it. If you shoot it, you're coming out of the game. And it's not to punish, but it's number one, to get players to understand where they're at so they can be successful. And so our team. And so I love it. And then it hopefully inspires them to go put in work. Now,
and let me clarify, it's not that they can't shoot it. They can take as many uncontested wide open layups as they want. They just can't shoot it from the perimeter.
From the perimeter, yeah. Now, if they can't make wide open layups, now that's another discussion, but I don't know what we do there.
Yeah.
All right. But here, I would say this, that bad shots kill team culture in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Especially, let me rephrase, bad shots unaddressed by the coach kill coach. So you could get in your locker room, you could do book studies, you could do your Monday culture meetings in an air-conditioned room. You could send out weekly emails to your program. You can have all the slogans on your wall, and you get into practice or games, and you got Christy, who can't shooting 8 threes a game, and nothing ever gets said. People going to get mad if they care about winning, they care about the team. And so as a coach, I do think sometimes that's not taught enough. One of the best things PGC, I feel like we're on a PGC infomercial here, but one of the best things that PGC teaches that to me is shot selection chart, 1 through 10 shot selection. So I do think that's a piece. I took what Neighbors had created and then kind of created my own version from it.
Yeah, I love that. Tyler actually spoke a lot about that when he came and spent a few days with our team, not only in the shot selection, but also the variety of games and making it fun and challenging, and people can move up and down the shooting ladder. So you're not permanently buried as a red, just kind of depending on how you want to flush that out per team. And it actually gave us a really good definition of those things this year. So I'm with you. I think that's been a huge addition to what we do. And it sounds like it's been something that you've adopted as well. All right, this one, because you're such a basketball guy, might not land well, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What have you learned watching other disciplines that you've been able to take and apply to basketball? And it can be whatever, again, my daughter's played travel softball for years. I coached that. One played field hockey, one played volleyball. I started watching that and seeing what I could utilize. What have you found outside of the realm of basketball that you've been able to implement and help your athletes grow?
Yeah, from like a system and strategy, studying other sports, probably not as much, even though I've got some coaches in our program that coach other sports like lacrosse and stuff, and they talk to me about how they take our basketball stuff and they go throw it into lacrosse. And
Mhm.
but I don't know much about lacrosse. I study a lot of like football coaches. It's always interesting to me how they manage a staff of multiple coordinators, multiple coaches, so many kids, how you get 60, 100 kids to buy into, one philosophy. So in football, sitting on that, it's so interesting to me. It's such a selfless sport where you have an offensive lineman just blocking his tail off, getting beat on by a 300-pound person, and they don't get write-ups. They don't get much glory. They do all this dirty work, or somebody holding a field goal kicker who has to hold the ball and on the snap. Like you just have to get all people to buy into what's going on. So from that standpoint, that's always interesting to me how coaches get them to buy in and get everybody on a same place culture wise. I've studied Anson Dorrance. I don't know if you're familiar
Oh
with
yeah.
him, UNC women's soccer coach who has won all these national championships in his competitive cauldron. And then I've, basketballized it. He calls, he learned Justin from Dean Smith,
Hmm.
the great UNC coach. And he was amazed by how Dean Smith was so organized and prepared. And then he took what Dean did. I say Dean, it's probably called Coach Smith. What Coach Smith did, and he soccerized it. So
Hmm.
then I've studied some Anson Dorrance and tried to basketballize it
Hmm.
in terms of competitive cauldron within our team where we track competitive things or do more competitive things, having a winner and a loser in practices and measuring that stuff.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that up. I'm actually halfway through The Man Watching, which is obviously the book about Anson Dorrance and his time, his coaching career. And it's fascinating. It's a definite must read at some point for people that are trying to grow. And I like the fact that you have your coaches taking basketball out to lacrosse, because I share office space with our head lacrosse coach, and we talk all the time about transferable, not just skills, but strategy things. And I actually was talking to a guy who sees himself as a basketball only player, and he also plays lacrosse. And he was talking about, how do I become the best basketball player? I'm like, keep playing lacrosse. He's like, what? Why? I'm like, because your defensive awareness is through the roof relative to others because of that game. And so I think there's a place for that as we grow and develop athletes. How would you say, if you had to characterize, I'm going to use the word failure because I don't have a better one, but a memorable failure, shortcoming, something that happened that was transformational for you and how you were able to progress in your coaching career?
So a coaching failure that was a great teacher for me.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
Yeah, I would say, again, I'm just going off the cuff here, but when I was coaching in college, you're so measured by your wins and losses and your value as a coach oftentimes. Even though everything I said up to this point, talking about being a transformational coach and wanting to impact lives, I want to do that, but then I shouldn't say but. So like also your self-worth or my self-worth was so tied to like, are we winning? Are we winning games? Are we winning championships? And if we were falling short of that, I felt like a worthless coach. And I tied a lot of my own self-value to how I was doing as a coach. And so for two things, like those failures probably forced me to ask better questions. And two things: one, my faith me is a big part of my life and my walk, and so getting grounded there spiritually puts a real centers me, and it grounds me on what I would believe is the most important things. And then two, I'm going to go back to a football coach, but like Nick Saban and the process, and I know they like make fun of that 76ers, like trust the process, but like,
not anymore the way Embiid is playing.
No, that's true. That's true. But, Saban talks about when he was at Michigan State, they were prepping, they were prepping for Ohio State. And he said, you know what, let's just focus on the process. Let's focus on preparing like a winning team and don't be married to the results. So he's talked about this a lot. Anybody listening, go YouTube it and you can see him talking about it. But to summarize it, is like, it really doesn't matter what outcomes we want. You want to make certain amount of money. You want to get a certain job title. You want to lose a certain amount of weight. It doesn't matter. Only thing that matters is what are you doing on a daily basis to what, and like this book I'm showing you, you probably won't be able to see it if you're listening.
I have that at my house.
Yeah. So like James Clear in Atomic Habits is a great book, but it talks about, creating systems. The systems will create the results. The results don't create it. So if the more we just get married to the day-to-day commitments and who we want to be, what we want to do, why we do it, the results will take care of themselves. And not many coaches can do that. Mm-hmm. Not many because we get so caught up in the results, but the quicker we get married to the systems and building habits, or the Navy SEAL way, we don't rise to the level of our dreams and hopes, we fall to the level of our training. And it's so true. And it sounds cliche and everybody says it, but a lot of people talk about it. Few people be about it. And so, I'd say be about it. And that's what I've learned, and I still learn.
Yeah, no, so much gold in that answer. And people that are listening, you say it sounds cliche, but there were a lot of good cliches in there that people can use and repeat and remind and instill those in your program. And if you hold people simply to those standards, your level will rise. Let's wrap up.
Sorry to interrupt for a second, but like the other thing is, if you look at your life, okay, anybody listening to this, me and you talking, put things in two categories: things we can control, things we cannot control. Mm-hmm. Where should we put our time and energy? Mm-hmm. Into the things we can control.
Correct.
Where do we put most of our time? Into the things we can't control. We put them into like the outcome of the game, making the shot. We put it into the person who just cut us off in traffic and we just laid on our horn and flicked them off, and we handed out the remote control. We let people piss us off or tick us off, and we let other outside things control everything rather than. And that's really what toughness is, right? And toughness is your ability to control, what you can control and put your time and energy into it. I feel
1,000%. Yeah, no, that's been a motto in our program since 2004, maybe, where a guy named Jimmy Carroll that played for Majerus at Utah, and I was interviewing him for a job, and one of my major takeaways was that was what Majerus talked about. He's like, don't spend time worrying about things you can't control. And then I started using that, control the controllables, focus on that. And it was actually, for me as an adult and as a human being, a important pivotal moment in my life where kind of what you said, what do you do every day? Like my daily process is I try to spend 0% of my time or energy on things that are beyond my control, because it's wasted time and energy. And living that out isn't always easy, but when you can, it makes things a whole lot easier. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. Let's ask this to wrap up. And this one's always kind of out of left field, so marinate on this as long as you need to. And it definitely does not have to be basketball related. It does not have to be coaching related. It can be about whatever you want it to be about. But Dave Stachowiak, who runs a podcast, Coaching for Leaders, asks this all the time. And the question is, what have you most recently changed your mind on? And by that, the way I've interpreted it is, I used to believe X, and now I believe Y because of this. And it's like the huge kind of, I went from here to here. And it's all the time we're looking at these things as we try to grow as leaders, as human beings, and we have to challenge our belief system. What's the most recent thing, Coach, that you've changed your mind on?
Oh man, how much time we got?
As long as you need. This is the last question.
No, I don't have a great answer here. So again, I mean, these are great questions, and so it forces you're making me better right now. So I appreciate you. I think I don't know if I changed my mind or just come to realization. One realization is that I don't know a whole lot. That I need to know more. I need to learn more. I need to things aren't linear. Things I need to be adaptable, and maybe the more I learn, the more I know I don't know, and then so for that to happen, there has to be a level of humility involved to get to that place. Now, and this is where it gets interesting, and maybe psychology of it, maybe you can help me out, but so there's a weird thing. Like I have a lot of confidence as a coach. Like when I step on the court, I feel like I can make players better or help them get better and help teams. And so I believe in things strongly, but I also believe what I just said a moment ago. And so it's like how, grounding yourself in some pillars and core values, but also being open-minded to knowing that what am I missing here? Where are my blind spots? And like, you can't be so like, open-minded and, all these things and not be grounded in anything either. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's one thing and I also like that I'm just not that important. I'm just like, and so I want to model that for players too, because I think sometimes really good players, you're feeling yourself or you're doing well athletically in any sport, and they get treated better, or that like in your situation, maybe they get more friends at school, or teachers might even, hold them to a higher standard, whatever it is. And so athletes can get elevated in their status. And like, we're really just not that important. What's important is like being a good teammate, having really authentic, real relationships that are life-giving for you and life-giving for those other people. I've been thinking about that a lot, like just how unimportant I am. I mean, I know I'm important to people in my life, of course, like my family and friends or people that I met, whatever it is, but that's my answer right now. Ask me tomorrow. I got 10 more things probably.
Well, that's the value of the question, right? If you're trying to figure out what do I really know, what do I don't know, figuring out the value you bring to the world, and you're always trying to grow that, right? That's the point of the question. It's a growth mindset question, right? How are you challenging and questioning your beliefs and validating them or changing them based on new information daily or weekly or monthly? And what I will say that popped up for me as you were talking is the idea of blind spots, and what systems do coaches in the community have in place to hold themselves accountable to their blind spots, right? Are they surrounding themselves with people that are going to watch their blind spots and coach them on their blind spots? And that has been super important for me in the last few years, having people in my life that will point those things out, because there are your blind spots for a reason. So I really like that contribution that you had there.
I know you might say something else. Again, this is triggered for me. I'll shout out, I think, because we talked about him earlier, but Mike Neighbors turned me on to an author named Annie Duke, who's written a couple books.
Thinking in Bets.
Yeah. And so the idea is we could probably do a whole podcast on it. So my brief thought for, again, the audience that may have not read this material is, life, basketball is a lot more like poker than it is chess or checkers. Meaning in checkers, if I move this piece here, then that will happen. If I do this in chess, then that'll happen. Mm-hmm. Whereas poker, for those that have or haven't played, like you're making a bet based on the information you have, and there's a certain percentage that then something could happen. But you could also have a 90% chance of winning and another card flips and you lose. Mm-hmm. And so that basketball, life, coaching is a lot more like that. We're trying to make the best decisions with the information we have. Just like I was trying to be a good coach 12 years ago, 4 years ago, and I was just doing the best with what I had at that moment. And now I look back with, I'm a father of 3, and being a father has made me a better coach because it's made me more empathetic to people. And that when I'm coaching a kid, I'm also coaching a son or a daughter of a parent. I know how much my 3 kids mean to me. They mean everything. Like I could get emotional and cry about it. And so when I coach a kid, I'm coaching somebody's other kid, and they're more than just a player. They're a person. So we're playing poker out here. We're trying to make the best decisions we can.
That is hands down one of the most influential books I've read in the last 2 years. And I've gifted it to more people than any other book I've shared. From the standpoint you just mentioned, you have to think in probabilities and then push your chips in based on the best odds. And that we have to avoid the idea that Annie Duke brings up called resulting, where you are evaluating your decisions based on the results rather than was it actually a good decision. And like you said, yeah, we could do a whole episode on this and we're not going to, but for people that are listening, that is a must read. Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. He also mentioned Atomic Habits, and those are great pickups if you're trying to grow. Are there any other resources, Coach, that you would direct people to that would give them the biggest bang for their buck from a efficiency and time standpoint? You seem to be on mute.
My apologies. You efficiency and time. You mean we talking life? We talking coaching?
Absolutely. Look, you're in a space by nature of being in the PGC world, in your blue collar basketball, in your fellowship and faith. What are a few things that you have found to be great resources where people can go that are interested in getting better at things?
Yeah. Well, go to YouTube, go to your local bookstore, go to Amazon, buy a book. I mean, we're in an information overload, and so I say that somewhat serious, but also somewhat joking. We got all the information. It's like, are you gonna do something with it? Mm-hmm. If I wanted to go learn how to run $1 million business, I think I could. If I need to go fix my lawnmower, I can YouTube it. All the answers are there. And sometimes we just don't follow our own advice. And that's what I say to myself when I'm in a predicament. And if I call my mentor to ask him a question, well, let me first call myself saying, what would you do? And then whatever advice I would give, and that's it. I need to go do it, because usually we have the answers. And that's, younger people or less experienced, maybe not. You do need that. So I'm going to give you 2 things. One is the resource you need is truly to invest in yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that starts in the morning. And so I win my day by winning my morning. I usually win my nights. I win my mornings by also winning the night before in my preparation. And then I automate my mornings, meaning when I wake up, I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to drink a glass of water. I'm going to grab an apple and one of my nutrition bars, and I'm going out the door and I'm going to go work out. And then when I get home, I'm going to do my gratitude. I'm going to do my devotional. And now I've trained. I'm not in this habit. This is where I used to read at that point. Now life comes at you. If you're a single person, you might have 2 hours in the morning. I got 3 kids. I got businesses I'm running. I don't have that luxury of time right now, but I get myself right, Justin, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. Those all kind of work together, and then it allows me to go out and be successful in my day. Now, I want to be clear here. I don't have it all figured out, and I fall short. I just was in a meeting right before I came on here, and I dropped a ball on something that I couldn't believe I dropped. That happens. But for the most part, I go win my days and my weeks and ultimately months and years. And I want to stack those on top. And it allows me to go make a bigger impact on people that I get to lead. It's like why you put the oxygen mask on first on the airplane. If I'm dead, I can't help you. If you mean you were sitting together, I don't put that, I can't help you because I'm dead. Right. And sometimes we're dead, but we're trying to help other people, and we got to get ourselves right. If you want to get right as a coach, and this is not, I have no shame in what I'm about to plug, but PGC coaching is our membership. And if you want to become a better coach, athletic directors buy this for their coaches at times. We have principals. And so we go really deep and try to help coaches be more successful in all the things we talked about today, from X's and O's to culture, leadership. So those are the resources. I'm not going to give advice, but that's what I'm sharing today.
Appreciate that, Coach. And I appreciate you taking the time. You're 3 hours ahead, so your day is already moving along. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.